Next part we're going to move into is a panel session. We're going to talk about internships, so that's a pretty good segue from skills you might need in an internship to skills. The focus here is to give people an opportunity to talk to students that have gone through internships, and ask questions, both online, can ask questions as well as students in the audience here. And so I think the way we'll start is by just maybe each of you can provide like a short introduction to who you are and also about your internship. So don't go into a huge amount of depth, just kind of start off with a little bit of context. And then if they don't have questions, I have questions. I will have questions. So we won't run out of questions. Maybe this is start. Oh, first person. There you go.
Hi everyone, my name is Trishna. I am a Fall 21 area student. I previously worked at Accenture for 4 years as an application developer and then as an analyst in part of the automation team, but there I was working with a lot of huge amounts of data, and that really compelled me to come for applied data science here. During the summer, I was interning with Charles River Associate, which is a consulting management firm headquartered in Boston, as an analyst. And yeah, I look forward to hearing your questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaylia. I'm a grad student in iSchool getting my master's in applied data science. This past summer, I had the opportunity to intern at Bloomberg in their New York City headquarters as an analytics and sales rep, and I did receive a full-time offer to return next year in July 2023. While I was interning, I had the opportunity to work in client-facing roles, work with different technologies in-house and even out-house, and travel to client meetings.
Hi everyone, my name is Angad and I am also along with Trishna a Fall 21 ADX student. I intern at Job, which is an insurance company, as an intelligent process automation engineer using primarily NLP and ML models to classify emails.
Great. So maybe I'll start with the first question, which is kind of like a question as the program director today. So if there was one course that was useful in your internship, which would it be?
I mean, I work with a lot of ML models, so for me it was applied machine learning. Just identifying when to use what kind of models and how to implement interpretability versus flexibility was very, very useful, especially since I was working at an insurance company. So being able to explain to clients why certain decisions have been made was about as important as making those decisions.
I think for me, the most important class was the database management class because ISP 659. We worked a lot with client data and pulling a lot of information, a lot of financial information that helps with like SQL and even cloud services like Azure.
For me, it was almost all the courses I've taken here because my job required me to multitask with cloud, with SQL, with cleaning the data, which could be you learn in IST 659, you learn it in IST 707. So it was a plethora of all bits and pieces from everything.
Interesting. Okay, let's see if there's any questions from folks. Anybody have a question you want to ask? People have an opportunity to ask a question. Yes.
I'm looking for the summer internship recently. I have a question that how many companies actually funded my applications for summer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was looking for an internship. Looking for an internship. And how many jobs should you post? Should you kind of apply to? You can either answer it for how many you actually apply to, or how many you think people should apply to, or any way that we want to answer.
I don't think there's a set number of applications you can submit. I personally applied to hundreds. Be on a lookout on LinkedIn, Handshake, and if the role suits what you really want to pursue in your career, please go forward with it. Do not have a set count, is my suggestion. Keep applying. Rejections are a you're gonna get used to it. It hurts, but you're gonna get used to it. So keep applying, do not get discouraged.
So for me, some of the best advice that I got was to apply to maybe like 5 or 6 a week, which sounds like a lot. I'm sure you guys know, but like right now is the season to be applying for like summer internships or even full-time positions for next year. Me personally, I ended up applying for maybe at least 30 different positions and got interviews for maybe like 15 of those companies. Bloomberg is the one that did stand out to me, so I ended up applying through with them. But in some, I definitely would say maybe like 5 or 6 a week.
I mean, a lot of it depends, right? What kind of experience do you bring with you? What kind of internship are you looking for? What are the market statistics for that particular year? In general, the more you apply, the greater your chances of actually landing an internship. So there is no upper limit to how many you should apply to. But as far as the lower limit is concerned, I would look at least applying to 3 or 4 a week right now.
So I think that's a really important question, actually, and I do think that last answer is there's not. It's not a penalty if you apply to too many, right? The worst thing that happens is you have to deal with too many interviews. That's not a terrible thing to deal with. You obviously don't have to take those interviews either, right? So applying to more is better than less. You'd be amazed at the number of students that apply to hundreds for internships, right? So that's not an unusual answer. It's important to spend some time. I do like the concept of trying to break it down on a weekly basis. Because as I said, apply to 200, that's going to be like, oh my gosh. But if it's do at least 5 a week or 7 a week. That seems more manageable, and it kind of it's just part of the process.
I mean, like, if you want to think about 7 a week, that's quantity, right? That's not hardcore at all. Beyond that, getting rejections isn't the end of the world because every rejection tells you something about what you could improve on your application. Every interview that you've gone through and that hasn't worked out tells you something that you could work on. Like I went through loads of those, and all of that led to me getting an internship at job with very little actual practical experience with machine learning. So interview as much as you can, apply as much as you can, and take every opportunity to improve your application.
Just to add, with every interview that you give, you are enhancing the way you talk and you're increasing the chances on landing the job that you want. So keep at it, do not get discouraged. It's very easy for us to say that. It is very hard when you have to deal with it. But know that everybody is in the same boat and you're going to sail through because everyone does.
Another thing I will add that both of them touched on is don't be afraid to ask your recruiter for feedback. Like when I was getting rejected, I would reach out to them on LinkedIn or even on email and ask them like, hey, like, what did I do that could have been done differently? Or how can I stand out next time in the next application cycle? And they were really receptive to the information that they were giving me, which in turn helped me in the end with not only applying to their company again, but even other companies that I ended up applying to as well.
Great. Good question. Sure.
There's an online question. Someone had the question about just asking about your prior background and knowledge when it comes to program languages or tools. Which ones were used the most, whether it's personally or within your professional or internship experience.
So great, so that's a couple of questions. So maybe the first one is about your background. So kind of did implicitly there a little bit, but maybe a little bit more in terms of did you have a technical background? Did you know how to program? Let's just start with that question.
So I am an electronics and communication engineer. That's what I did my undergrad in. At my previous job, I used to use Unix scripting, so I did understand how it goes, how do you script. I personally learned Python before I came to Syracuse University because I knew for a data scientist, you need to know Python. I interned with someone who had no technical experience and still she got a full-time offer just like me. So if you're in case you guys do not have a technical background, as long as you are inquisitive and you show the zest to learn, you can sail through. This has got nothing to do with the fact that you need to have XYZ skill sets always. As long as you're willing to learn, you will be able to, but then that does not mean you just go and learn it at the internship. I would suggest that the courses here are touching those languages. I would say SQL, Python, R. but then put in some work other than your coursework to actually shine so that you can actually clear the interviews. Because there have been cases where I have been asked to build ML models when I was just completely new to data science. So having some skill set would help. That being said, like I said, I had a friend in my internship. She got a full-time offer just like me because the manager could see that she actually was trying and she was actually implementing whatever was asked.
I think for me personally, so I got my bachelor's degree in public policy, so I was in Maxwell. I didn't come from a tech background. I was initially, before going into iSchool, I was getting my master's in public health. I had a professor that works closely with the CDC writing code for them who asked me if I wanted to join his team. My first programming language with that internship was R, and it turned out I was really good at what I was doing in the internship that I had. So it dawned on me to take the next step further to think like, well, if I'm good at this, well, what else could I be good at? So I started self-teaching Python, and then it went into SQL, and then I finally made the move into the iSchool this past January. And since then, the opportunities have been amazing. So just in sum, I don't come from a technology background, but having that drive to want to learn more and continue learning and, relying on the people around you as resources was definitely beneficial.
Just picking up from where Trishna and Kelia left off, I come from a very non-tech background. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one's in law and the other is in international relations, international business. I then worked in business dev for 6 years, using absolutely no computer science at all. My introduction to programming was in Dr. Saltz's class, where I studied R, and following on from there, SQL with Professor Hoyos, and applied machine learning for Python with Dr. Yang. What was important throughout all of this, as Krishna mentioned, was a zest to learn. It's as long as you're in data science, you are at the confluence of multiple industries, kind of exploring how those industries can be incorporated with tech. You don't necessarily have to be incredibly technically gifted as long as you can be flexible in your application of technology across a multitude of industries. And I think that's what's more important to think about, is not just, do I know Python, do I know SQL, do I know R, but do I also know how to take elements from these languages, analytics from these languages, and give them to people who might not understand not just the program, but also the statistics behind it, right? So a lot of data science revolves around storytelling. It's not just technical. I think that's something a lot of people tend to forget, just seeing the words data science in there.
So thank you. Just to recap, so I didn't pick somebody down the panel that actually had a technical background, but probably should have thought about that. We do have obviously a lot of students that do have a technical background, and I think obviously it's not important to have technical background in order to get a good job. That's quite clear, because the courses here give you that foundation, as long as you have interest. Other questions? Yes.
So now just one of which was saying how like important to you were like kind of self stories, like through like the data that they're working with. What would you guys say, like how would you guys say that you were doing that like project internship, like personally, how would you telling stories like something that you don't know that in my opinion?
So the question was, I'm just going to repeat it so everyone else. The question was, even we heard earlier today, radio science is using data to tell a story. And the question is, did that happen in your internships? And kind of can you explain some of this being close to?
So I worked in an insurance company, right? And we had a plethora of models. I worked primarily on email classification, but the models that they use to figure out what kind of an insurance quote you should get, the models they use to figure out whether or not your insurance claim should go through, they are based on, from my memory, the model they use for insurance quotes is a very simple linear regression model. And the reason it's a simple linear regression model is because the coefficients are very easy to explain to people, right? So the stories you tell at an insurance company with data quite literally relate to whether or not you get insurance. But I have a feeling that Trishna probably has much more to say since you work with management consultants.
Yeah, good. So whenever I was trying to talk to a client or trying to explain to someone, I would try to make it as non-technical as possible. And this is something that I've heard people tell me that the better you understand your concepts, the easier it is to tell you. So it's like I'm talking to a 2-year-old child. If I have to explain it, I have to make sure that the technical terms are not put forth because they are going to get overwhelmed, because that's why we are hired. We are the technical team. We need to simplify it for them. So I would just think if I'm talking to a child, how I'm going to explain it, and I used to always do that. Visualizations really help. Tableau, ClickView, if you guys, I mean, it would be very interesting. There's a data visualization course here as well. That really helps. But try and make it as simple as possible is my suggestion. The better you understand your data, the easier it's going to be for you to communicate it. And the easier you communicate it, the happier the client is, and that's how you get more business for your company.
You made a really good point about making it just simple as possible. My internship at Bloomberg, I was working with credit analysts and equity analysts who were interested in different sectors in the market and had different types of niches, whether it be like commodities or different types of materials, and just knowing and having that information from them and being able to, create models and make predictions and tell them the story for them and help them understand. They didn't come from technical backgrounds, but having that technical background to break it down for them and then tell that story in the simplest way possible, so they can then take that information and then bring it back to their own team was definitely something that was helpful for me and for them.
That's something you should be practicing in projects, which is how to explain to them. Just highlight something, keeping it simple doesn't mean dumbing it down. There's a difference between those two statements. It's explaining the insights in an intuitive manner as opposed to like not providing them insights.
Yeah, I generally try to avoid jargon. I generally try to avoid jargon is what I meant.
Yeah, jargon words. Yes.
Thank you for sharing my experiences. I wanted to understand how we can enhance our existing skills in order to sail through the network.
So the question was, how can somebody enhance their technical competency in order to kind of get through the technical interviews, which some companies do?
What helped me a lot was HackerRank. I probably do that. I put it in my schedule, honestly, even during the semester or during the summer when I was interning to, just set aside some time, maybe an hour or two a week, to focus on HackerRank and walk through some potential questions that might be on your interviews, and that helped me out.
I mean, for me, my technical interview was more statistics and less programming. And as far as I'm concerned, what really helped was ISLR, which is the textbook, and reading as many research papers as I could get my hands on. So in this instance, I knew that I would be working with a lot of unstructured textual data. I would need to use transformers, I need to use natural language models. So that's what I focused reading on. So figure out what your internship is, what avenue and stream it is in. You're likely to be asked questions from that stream, right? So focus on that in addition to HackerRank and LeetCode and Kaggle and whatever else you want to use.
I actually agree with both of them. Additional to that, sometimes I would even reach out to the recruiting manager and ask them, can you just give me a list of what I can expect so that I can actually excel in the interview. Most of the times I've got a response back where they're like, we might touch these topics. And obviously supplement that with the job description. What they have written is what they need. So try and brush up those skills. Other than that, I would Google. If I have an interview with XYZ company, sometimes on Glassdoor, you'll find questions, sample questions that give me a ballpark range of what can I expect out of my interview, and I would brush up those skills as well. But if you are constantly studying every week, you're breaking it down for yourself, you won't get overwhelmed when you get an interview. So keep it as an iterative process. Do not just start studying when an interview call comes. You need to supplement them and make sure that it's handled. But do reach out to your recruitment manager and do ask them because it really helps.
So this is another example where you try to think about it week by week as opposed to like, what do I need to know? It's an easier process, which is part of your
Another thing I would add is using LinkedIn. Like when I was going through my interview processes, I was reaching out to people that were in the position I was applying to and asking them like, what can I look forward to on the interview? How can I best prepare and how can I stand out? And 9 times out of 10, if not all the time, they're willing to help you out and give you that information on how to be successful in your interviews.
Use your professors at Syracuse as much as you can. Like when I had my interviews, I spoke a lot with Professor Yang because he was my environmental teacher. And he was a fount of information, right? So create a relationship with a professor whose instruction you enjoy, and feel free to ask them for resources to further explore an avenue that you're interested in. Knowing more than you're expected to know is never a bad thing.
One thing to add, and it's building on what Amit said. You can reach out to the career services at the iSchool as well. They're really helpful. I have reached out to them asking if they know any seniors who I can connect to who have been through the same process so that I understand what questions can be asked. Again, that's just trying to not get overwhelmed and pacify myself and be sure that I am putting my best foot forward. The more prepared I am, the more centered I'm going to feel, and the better the interview will go.
Because of technical we have the right enough. How is it if there are platforms to practice behavioral interviews?
So the question is about behavioral interviews. Some people like to think that we're doing soft stuff, it's really important and you're right on its importance. So not the technical stuff, the other stuff.
So I think as Krishna was alluding to, use career services. You can actually set up mock interview sessions with career services, and they are incredibly detailed. Like not just with respect to the depth of the interview, but also the depth of the critique that you get after the interview. So yeah, with respect to behavioral interviews, a lot of it depends on how confident you are in asserting what you know, right? And the best way to develop that confidence is to actually know what you're talking about. And in addition to that, to practice talking about what you know, which is what these mock interview sessions really help with.
I would say getting on the internet. So like when I was going through my interview with Bloomberg for the behavior, we had 2 assessments, and getting on Glassdoor, a lot of people gave very detailed information about what they were asking during the behavioral. That way, when I found that information, I was able to put it into a Word doc and formulate the answers in my liking and how I would want to answer them. And then also tailoring the responses to my personal experience to make it much more real.
They both touched upon everything I had to say. I use my personal experience because I have worked in the industry. I knew if such a situation occurred, how I would feel about it and how I would want to make sure that if something is right, I do it. If it's not, I don't. There is one website that the career services provides where I actually practice. I can't remember the name, so I would request you to reach out to me after this and I'll send you the link. It's probably on answers.syo.edu itself, but I will find the name for you. There you can practice yourself in front of a camera, because I personally am not very comfortable talking in front of a camera. I am flawless when it comes to going in person and talking, but I am equally awkward when I'm on camera. So that would really help because everybody right now takes them online. Personal interviews don't really happen that often. I will just reach out to me, I'll send you the link.
So you also said that you have like not a lot of technical skills, but I think you leverage your other skills when like in the application process.
So yeah, the question was, you talked about your technical skills and you gained through various things. How did you leverage all the other skills that you had, either to get this interview or elsewhere? And how do you think maybe outside a little bit, how might you leverage that going forward in your search?
Growing up personally, I had stage fright. So it was an iterative process again. I used to intentionally in my undergrad go and speak in front of a class so that I have the confidence to talk. If you know certain areas are a pain point for you, try to improve on that. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Other than that, I would say make sure that your resume is good. You can reach out to the career services as well. Because if your resume does not pass through the ATS system, you won't get a call back, which is another big issue. But understanding from their point of view, they have so many applicants applying. They need to have a filter system around. But I think other than that, I mean, I can't think of anything else right now. Do you guys?
I think other skills that I got to leverage was my networking skills. So one point I already brought up was talking to people on LinkedIn and using them as a resource. But once you get into that company, still network, you still want your name to enter rooms that you haven't even entered yet. You want to be able to, seize different opportunities that people might know of that you're not aware of. So just networking with different people and just being vocal about what I want out of my internship led me to that full-time offer.
I mean, for me, I studied law, right? So there's a direct relation with law and regulation and insurance. And understanding how regulations work with law, with insurance companies, and how they then have to keep abreast of those for data meant that I could essentially skip like 3 training courses. But besides that, because I'm transitioning almost entirely from the business domain to the technical domain through my internship, there wasn't much overlap besides just actually understanding things better.
Questions? Yeah.
There's another one online. They were just kind of asking, what does data science entail, just beyond learning code?
So the question is, pretty generically, besides coding, which would be in R or Python, what else is data science?
I mean, that's an interesting question because I don't really see where data science ends. You could begin with statistics, programming, and subject matter expertise, but from there you can go so many places. I don't really think there's a limit to what is data science. I just think that these are the fundamental starting blocks from which we create data science.
You said it perfectly. Another thing I would add would be the beauty of data science is not being tied down to one specific industry. You can work in healthcare, you can work in finance, you can work in education, you can work in so many different sectors. So that data science background alone is it just opens up so many different opportunities for you, and you're not tied down to one thing.
I would answer this as curiosity and intuition. That's very important when you are trying to solve a problem. And that is what data science is to me, because I'm really interested in understanding how can I solve this problem, and that's what drives me. So other than the technical aspect, it would be curiosity.
So I like that kind of couching in data science is solving problems. What do you need to solve a problem? It's technical skills, we need stuff beyond that is science, but the field is what touch stuff. Questions? Yes.
So I have a couple of questions. First one is the timelines, like when do we applications and the probable periods of the reply we receive, and various other sources apart from LinkedIn, Indeed, and Handshake. That would be my first question.
So let's see that. So the first question was kind of a rough timeline of kind of the internship process.
Yes.
And the second thing is where were you and where should people find job opportunities?
So for the timeline, I would say like applying now, this is the season to apply for internships and full-time jobs. Usually when you're applying to like a technical role, there's more than one step in the application process. There's usually the behavioral, then there's probably the technical, and then there might be an additional technical, and then you'll usually hear something back. A lot of employers, and if they don't, you should probably ask, but a lot of employers will tell you usually the different timelines that you might have and when you will hear something back. What was the second question?
Resources, so different, where do you find jobs or where should people find jobs?
Yes. Well, for me personally, I was using Handshake and LinkedIn. I don't usually use Indeed, but I do utilize LinkedIn. When you're on LinkedIn, you can find people that went to the same university as you that can probably help you find different positions and just connect with recruiters that probably even went to the same school as you as well. So just utilizing LinkedIn and Handshake, I'm sure there's so many other more.
I think what Kelia started with saying about like this being the season to apply is spot on. You could keep applying Funky Kingdom come, right? Like you could apply till July next year, but start applying right now. As to when you can expect a response, different companies have different times. So it depends entirely on your recruiter, on the role being recruited for, and the company who's doing the recruitment. Again, as far as like where you should be looking for jobs, I think the vast majority of us find internships and job opportunities on Handshake and LinkedIn. In addition to that, I leverage a lot of personal networking because I've worked for 6 years before this. But Handshake and LinkedIn are, I think, fantastic resources.
Same as both of them. I have friends who got internships very late in the season. So do not get discouraged in case you're not getting callbacks. But now is the right time because a lot of big companies have start early and they finish early. So definitely do not miss out on the opportunity now. But in case it doesn't work out, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. It will work out because a lot of friends have got internships at last.
Yeah, I wanted to stress that point. So I kind of see when students get it. And a bunch get them before winter break. Those are the lucky students because they're not worrying about it during the rest of the time. But I also see students getting it in March and April, even in May. I've seen students get really, really good internships. So don't get disheartened. Don't think that if you submit internships 10 a week for the next 3 weeks, that's going to be it. You might be doing that for a long time, but you're going to school for a reason. So put some effort into getting the job market. Other questions? So I'm going to ask a question if there's one right now. So I asked, because I'm an academic program, I asked about the course that was most helpful. When you came back from the internship, is there one course in particular that you wanted to take? Maybe you're taking it now, maybe you're not. Is there one course that you wanted to take?
Yeah, so for me personally, Bloomberg, if you guys don't know, is like the powerhouse for financial data and media. I had no idea about the financial markets before my internship at Bloomberg, but since coming back from Bloomberg and knowing I will have a full-time offer with them next year, I decided to take financial 654, I think it's financial analytics. That class has been super helpful and it's really just brought all of my knowledge from my internship into more of a succinct learning capability for me. So yeah.
For me, it is big data analytics. I'm taking up this course in the semester because I was working with a lot of data. I wanted to find a way in which I could process the data faster than I usually do. And that course is actually helping me understand how do I go ahead next time when I'm working with huge amounts of data.
So much like Krishna, I work with an incredible amount of unstructured data. So big data analytics was on the radar. But in addition to that, I also wanted to better understand managing data science projects and everything. So that might be a course that I look forward to taking in the future, especially since the work at Job involved creating the entire ML infrastructure. So it's a massive mass scale data science project for them.
Questions? Yes.
I was just curious, like, what was like an average day for you, like, at those internships? Like, were you like in a team environment or like more by yourself? And just like, how was like the environment for this? Like,
Great question. So the question was, what was a typical day like in terms of like, were you by yourself, were you with a team? Maybe the types of work you were doing.
Yeah, so at Bloomberg, it was a team environment, very collaborative. There was usually when you think of an internship, you think of, you go in, you do your work and you keep your head down, you don't bother nobody. At Bloomberg, it's definitely wasn't that. We were doing very meaningful work for their internal company and what was going on. I had a lot of client visits and I was leading those client visits as an intern. And overall, just there, they were telling us that, coming in as an intern, we expect you to work like a full-time employee, and that's exactly what we did. And having that opportunity showed me, this is what I could look forward to. So if I don't like it, it's something I can, reject if I got that full-time offer. But knowing that I had the opportunity to work as that full-time employee and actually liked what I was doing, I was super excited to accept. So it was just giving the opportunity to know what I was going to be working on a day-to-day basis when I came back.
For me, it was a mix of both. Since I had a technical background, My boss wanted to leverage those skills and he would give me tasks which were just specific to me. But then I got to work with a team as well, and we were working with client data, and we would help each other out. We would get into team discussions, trying to understand how can we approach this problem in the most efficient way. So it was a little both.
I mean, like Trishna, I began working in a team. Eventually, I was assigned to coming up with a project and completing it with another intern, but we were given charge of overseas resources. So you were always working in a team. It was just your role in the team changed through the internship.
You're all physical or virtuals.